Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here back at the virtual racing compound. Myself, Hasse Rømer, and Edward May, of course, the brilliant man that he is. We're here for the 6th round of the Sunday GT Masters, the second endurance round of this season that we're currently having unfold before our eyes, Edward. 90 minutes here at Mount Panorama. It's going to be quite the challenge indeed.
It is Mount Panorama Bathurst. It's such a brilliant circuit to drive, but one where you have to be on your absolute A game to get around, not just quickly, but also in one piece. The mountain is a very cruel and unforgiving mistress, and we have to hope that everyone can get through in this next 90 minutes worth of racing, because it's a long time to try and go round and around without meeting a sticky and brutal end in the walls. But we don't have to worry about the 90 minutes because we do still have 50 minutes of qualifying. They've just done 6 minutes and 20 seconds. And currently Nicholas Cucato, top of the pile there. As drivers are on their outlets for the second half of qualifying. I'd like to sort of split the session in two. Have first half of it on one set of tyres. Then when they've done all they think they can do, they come back in and reset, get a fresh pair of tyres on and go out again, because they're only really good for 1 or 2 laps. I mean, these longer style circuits where the laps time zone, the sort of 2-minute range, it tends to be only good for 1 lap.
Yeah, with 6.5 kilometers more or less of tarmac to get around on a lap, it's impressive to see him do it in just over 2 minutes, to be honest. It's going to be an absolute flyover race. Last time we saw this out, because remind you, of course, they still have the 50% fuel cap, so we'll see pit stops around every half hour. And last time we had a 90-minute race, the big issue was making it to that half-hour mark. A thing that I could see being quite a challenge here at Bathurst, given the long straights that they were dealing with here tonight. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not the drivers are going to be struggling in terms of getting there in time. A little bit of argy-bargy going there, Edward.
Yeah, and Martin's really not wanting to try anything too much into this sort of area of qualifying, because now he might have some dirty air and some traffic potentially coming up through the mountain, but everyone's together because they can see just how strong the slipstream is, and he's already looped it around Martin de Jong. So has actually a spinning sympathy of Nick McLaughlin. I think it was all kick-started by someone up ahead. It might have been Nicholas Cucato. I think, yes, it was. He's just peeled off into the pits. So one mistake coming in towards, I believe it's Hell Corner, the first corner around here at Bathurst, is one that's seen 3 drivers already have an end to their second run in qualifying.
Yeah, I was just going to find the pictures that we saw there from Nicholas Cucato. That was
just
tiny
wide,
moment,
getting a 1x.
Goes across the track ahead of someone else. I don't know if that was it, or there must have been more stuff happening, because something happened to Martin de Jong as well. There could have been earlier in the session, however.
Grass. I think Martin de Jong touched the grass on the exit, and that span him around, and I think Nick McLaughlin made a similar mistake as well, just in behind. So it was 3 mistakes all coming in quick succession, all at the same part of the circuit. So I think they just sort of started following each other off, which isn't necessarily great, but that's what happens when everyone's so close together in qualifying. Plenty of time in the session, though, to go again as we watch Remco Barlow. Currently personal best, Sector 3 and 4. Sector 5 was not quite good enough. As we come into Sector 6, he'll hope for a nice good run. That's a really nice Lou Murray's avoiding the curb and just getting a nice exit.
There's a thing I want to touch upon. Sorry, Edward, but there's a thing. Let's see if it's an improvement for Remco. First of all, it doesn't look like it immediately. Nope. Anyway, I wanted to touch upon the championship standings while we can, before we run out of time here, because we have a new leader in both classes, actually, as far as I can see. Charlie Lund-Nielsen, now the leader in Pro.
As I've just seen, Gaston Messeroni has gone to the top of the timing sheet. Nearly 3/10 faster. That's the big improvement.
It is indeed, but is it really worth cutting over my championship standings readout for? I am offended, Edward. I am deeply offended. 4 points separate Charlie Lund-Nielsen from Remco Barlow now, so that's a tight one we're coming into the final bit of the season for here. Nicholas Cucato in 3rd place. He's 18 points behind, on par with Patrick Gannon at 160. And then 5th in there is Gaston Messeroni. Both Matthew Forrest and Martin de Jong has sort of been dislodged from that championship fight at this moment But it's really turning out to be a two-horse race, I think, between Charlie Lund-Nielsen and Remco Barlow. In AM, we've got Ari Sherwood leading by a hefty 6 points, which is not a lot. With 184 over 178, and that's in front of Alfredo Tricarici, of course. And I think Ari Sherwood has taken the lead in the AM driver standings as well, coming into this one. Darren Fellows in third with 160 points to his name, and then Chris P.O. trailing Matt Maddox, that is. Fourth and fifth, Matt Maddox and Chris P.O. in AM. And that was just to make sure we to touch upon the driver standings, so we're up to date with what's behind the racing that we're going to see now. That was a brilliant lap indeed, Edward, from Gaston Maceroni.
Not so great that he's in the wall there up at the top of the mountain, but he's already did the hard work earlier on in this session, and now it's up to everyone to try and chase after him. Martin de Jong, personal best in the first sector. Let's see if we can go on board, Hasse, for the Angry Sheep Sims driver. Say he was pretty quick last time out in Fuji, coming in second place, but a few mistakes creeping in here and there, and in these longer races, that might just work against him there, just coming over the crest of the hill. And from pretty much here on out, it is all downhill now, right over the crest, and chucking into the left-hander, just having to balance it off throttle, but get too tentative, then in towards Skyline, dropping down named Skyline, because that's pretty much all you can see as you plunge down and through into the dipper as the car compresses and dips up the suspension. And then Forest Elbow, the final corner, you want to stay as right as possible as you can, and then hooking left. Martin Dillon was just a thing.
So I'm afraid Edward May has turned into a robot for a moment here.
All the way down through the drop of the mountain, which might not help much, but it is in order. Just coming up now in towards the cutting, and now the final corner. Murray's it's right over to the right hand side, and then just avoid the curb on the inside, because that can then settle the car. Just about gets it nice, but struggles to get on the power. What's it going to be as he crosses the line? There was a personal best, session best in the middle there. What was it going to be? Second best for Martin de Jong. He has enough time, though, to get out if he hurries up. Oh, no, I think he's just missed out now. He won't be able to go around for one final attempt. All these drivers on out laps as well will struggle, because it's 2 minutes on a flying lap. All those drivers you just saw coming past Martin de Jong in the pits will struggle.
So this is the final lap for... Oh, no, yeah, this is going to be the final flying lap for those on and out lap now as well. So Maceroni, Cucato, Charlie Lund-Nielsen, and Patrick Gannon, joined by Pete Plastow and Chris Roberts as well. Ari Sherwood just put in a time, but no improvements for him. Darren Fellows is massively quick in his Ferrari compared to everyone else in AM at the moment. I'd like to see the pace difference in the classes there. A 202.61. That's ahead of Kevin Blue for Lone Star Racing. And that's 7/10 of a second. That's a pretty hefty advantage. Look at the slipstreaming going on here. It's now Cucato behind Gaston Maceroni, and maybe the tides will turn. Was that going to be an 1x even for the guy ahead? Of course, it doesn't really matter. All eyes on Nicolas Cucato for the moment.
I think it's fine. Well, the guy ahead is Gaston Maceroni, his teammate and current pole sitter. So if Gaston can get a little bit more time out, that would cement him as top spot in qualifying onto pole position. You don't really get a 1x through Griffins there, so it all seems to be fine. But Nicolas Cucato is absolutely flying. Just brushes the wall and runs a little bit wide. That will be a 1x. And you can see him onto the brakes and going straight on through Skyline. He knows that it's not good enough. So focus will go to Charlie Lund-Nielsen, who's gotten across the line in time to start a final flying lap just in time. So I think eyes will inevitably shift from Gaston to Charlie Lund-Nielsen, driver that we have said is in the championship fight against Remco Barlow. Remco Barlow, astonishingly, not inside the top 10 and not looking likely to make it, as he is down in 11th place and not on the circuit. So this is very good news for the Swede.
Yeah, and he doesn't need to push unnecessarily hard on this lap. Oh. Yeah, Patrick Gannon, purple,
like...
6th sector there, that's true.
Charlie's gone purple in the 2nd sector, so we have to watch Gaston as he makes his way up to the line. He's closest to finishing his lap, just through sector 6, the final corner. Very nice exit from what we've seen there. Is it going to be enough to improve and
yes, it is.
More on pole position? Yes, it is. That's a very strong lap time indeed. But then we come to Charlie Lund Nielsen, personal best, session best in sector 2. Sector 3 was lacking just a touch, but in towards sector 4 will come this left-hander downhill. Seems to pick up the throttle very nicely, does the Audi. It helps him all the way down the straight. But I'm not sure if we'll have enough to beat Gaston this lap. Maybe enough to get onto the front row ahead of Martin de Jong. But other than that, it's going to be very tricky to see him beating that lap time from Gaston, which looked pretty much inch perfect from what we saw at least. Dan Conrad straight into the cutting. Comes now just over the curbing, and it's all right to do that. It might unsettle the car, but chucks you over onto the right-hand side and you can hook on the inside through the right-hander, but he actually pulls left into the pits now. So Charlie Nielsen aborting his final attempt. Last driver on the circuit that's going to complete a lap time will be Pete Plastow. And as he breaks the timing beam, he goes just ahead of Matthew Forrest.
So just a slight improvement there for Pete Plastow, but not much there. It's Gaston Maceroni for Coanda on pole position ahead of Martin de Jong, not by much there, 0.03 of a second. Then 0.3 of a second down to Nicolas Cucato, and then Charlie Lund Nielsen joining him on row 2. On row 3 is Patrick Gannon and Nick McLaughlin, with Craig Durand and Darren Fellows, the AM leader, on row 4 up in 8th place there, ahead of Pete Plastow and Matthew Forrest, both for Virtual Racing Compound. On row 5, that's of course 9th and 10th. Remco Barlow 11th there. The championship contender isn't going to be lacking that at all. It's rather far back to be. And then Matthew Terry with him on row 6. The AM cars will be coming thick and fast over there, just behind of Chris J. Roberts. We've got Kevin Blue for Lone Star Racing, then Alfredo Tricarici and Ari Sherwood, Cody Steek, Baron Glover, and Matt Maddox, completing the 19-car grid for this race tonight. So it's going to be interesting to see just what kind of race it's going to be. If I was starting here, Edward, I'd make pretty damn sure that I survive the opening 2-3 laps first and foremost, and then you can start sort of settling into it from there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Hasse. It's all about just settling into the rhythm, especially in these longer races. You don't want to try anything too risky or too sort of sketchy into the first few laps. Of course, it'll help you track position into these endurance races, and it is relatively difficult to pass around this circuit. Not impossible, but not the easiest circuit, especially up towards the mountain. But I have to agree with you. You need to have a level head around here, especially at the start.
It's going to be interesting to see just what kind of, as I said before, just what kind of start we're going to get. Because there's always going to be a lot. The thing is, though, is if everybody is being sort of patient and careful and all these things that you maybe want to see from a field of drivers coming into a start like this, there's always going to be one or two able to make some big gains then. And whether we're going to see that here tonight, it's going to be an interesting one.
So they're getting underway, not up to racing speed, but pacing slowly behind the pace car. Looking like it might go green just as soon as they exit the final corner, which will be good news for Gaston Maceroni. But with Martin de Jong in behind, he will be very hungry coming up the start-finish straight in towards the first bend up the mountain.
So with the field lining up and 90 minutes of racing on display here tonight from the Sunday GT Masters, we are just about to go green. And it's Gaston Maceroni on the inside. He goes immediately as they round Murray's Corner. And it's down towards hell indeed for 90 minutes. And that's Nicolas Cucato having taken ahead of Martin de Jong in the start already. So far it seems like everybody's gotten through cleanly there at turn 1. A bit of a move made on Baron Glover by Matt Maddox as well, as we have the field steaming past here. And for the first time, Ed, up the mountain we go.
Yeah, for the first time, and they're all ever so close, which is where all the danger and the risky bits can occur. Darren Fellows is dropping back down through the field quite dramatically. I'm not sure what's going on to the BDM racing driver there. Is Ferrari not getting pace out of the first bend up towards the mountain, right under Griffin's Bend, but I have no idea what happened there. He's got damage there on the left-hand side, so that could be contact with a wall or maybe contact with another car.
We're going to have a look at it just in a few moments' time when we've had the dust settle here from the opening lap, just to make sure we see all of what is to see indeed here. I wish I could just get the timing on that camera switch right, but I managed to mess it up twice, so we'll just leave it at it. So far, it's just a long worm of cars, basically, just traveling around. Charlie Lund-Nielsen there, still in 4th place. He's got Patrick Gannon, Nick McLaughlin there as well. Basically, the big winner, Nicolas Cucato, getting a spot on Martin Young there, coming into turn 1. And then the big loser here on lap 1 must be Darren Fellows, who's now... Here's Kevin Blue is side by side with Chris Roberts. It says Lone Star Racing, but that's a VRC. Oh, it is a Lone Star Racing. It just looked very VRC. As to me, Roberts goes across the grass there, and Darren Fellows is going to be locked in behind. He just about makes it to the inside of him, and I think he's going to switch on up and follow Kevin Blue through on Chris Roberts, who hasn't had the best of season so far. Matt Maddox has had a problem as well, I'm afraid, and this could be ever so slightly more dramatic. Let's see what's happened here for Matt Maddox, all on his own.
Just next the rear.
Yeah. Tires not all up to temp, I think, might be the issue here. Patrick Gannon is having a good run here on Charlie Lund-Nielsen. It seems that Lund-Nielsen goes way wide.
I think he's looking in his mirrors more than anywhere else. He's going up the inside as well. I think that's Nick McLaughlin who's got the position made. Very well done there. So he saw an opportunity and seized it very effectively. There was a tiny gap for him to sort of, squeeze through, but made it work. Let's have a look at the replay here. So Pete Plastow in the Ferrari. This was at the start of the race, and that was just down to, that was, I think, just too deep into the corner by Darren Fellows.
And
then Patrick Gannon, the RPM Racing BMW, was just going to see Charlie Lund-Nielsen go way too deep, and then in behind Nick McLaughlin, he sees a slight chance, goes for it, brushes the wall, squeezes up the inside and through. So that was a mistake from Charlie, looking behind rather than ahead.
As we rejoin the live action, we're going to cut straight to a replay again as Kevin Blue takes the wall. Oh, hold your brakes, mate. And he just about does so in time.
Risky is this already at the start of this race. The sparks are flying. Carbon fibre is certainly being broken and bent. As Martin Young up the inside now for P2. Back up ahead of Nicolas Cucato. Lost out at the start of the race, but is now getting a little bit quicker and making the move work nicely. You can see he made his intentions very clear. Oh no, that was actually, he was going to the inside, then faked to the outside. Forced Nicolas Cucato into a position where he didn't really want to be. He got the move done very cleanly, so credit to him. And now I think Martin Young is going to start to focus on Gaston Mesa, who's just in the fastest lap of the race so far, a 2-minute 2.85.
And another nice little overtake here, I think, from Charlie Lund-Nielsen, who gets a massive run on Nick McLaughlin, who I think just put a foot off track for a moment there and left himself exposed to the championship leading Swedish driver. He'll be hard pressed to come up with something here. Gaston Maceroni, though, that we're 2 seconds up the road on his own, with the rest of the guys sort of squabbling in behind here.
Yeah, I have to say, Martin Young is blinking a little bit for me, Hasse. I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but that could be a worry up through the mountain with the cars in behind. They're not entirely sure where the car is going to be, and that can cause a little bit of a worry. But I have to say as well, this BMW is the car to be in. It just looks so more stable and more predictable through there. I've already seen Charlie Nielsen in the Audi make a mistake up through the mountain and lose out for it. We've also seen, of course, Darren Fellows in the Ferrari have an error at the opening stage of the race, whereas these BMWs, they are locking out the top 4 spots. It definitely appears to be the car to be in right now.
Yeah, the BMW with the straight line speed, but also the performance in the sort of over the top of the mountain with the stability and everything. You'd sort of expect it to be very strong around here. Very strong on the curbs also, which is going to gain you time here on Mount Panorama. We haven't really spoken too much about the liveries this season. The Angry Sheep Sims. I'm not gonna say what it says. It's a wild donkey. That's what it is. An ass. It's a perfect excuse to say the word.
Well,
but not a bad paint job though.
Actually, Hasse, to Justin Mason only lost a bit in that final sector, but the times aren't too dissimilar from first to second, which bodes well, of course, for the racing action of the long train of cars in behind, because they can just sit in behind Martin de Jong, and I think he's definitely quicker than Kukato at this stage of the race, but Nicholas won't mind that too much. He can stay in behind, save a bit of fuel, and of course in these endurance races, saving fuel is a lot more important than it would be in those sort of 45-minute sprints.
Yeah, of course, and it's especially because making it to that 30-minute marker on your first two stints is going to be oh so important. So it's a little bit too early to call out anything, I think, at this stage. It's a modest advantage of 2.5 seconds from Martin de Jong to Gaston Maseroni. We've had pit stops as well. And a pit stop that was for, well, Kevin Blue was in, and Darren Fellows has had an issue here. Oh my word, that car is heavily bent, Edward. Oh, he comes across. Well, you gotta be ready for seeing that sort of thing that looks like it's a toe job to me. He sort of tries to insist on, oh, we've had more trouble, I'm afraid. And this one is of, oh my word! Whatever happened here between Remco Barlow and whoever that is, Chris Roberts in the Audi?
Was it? I think it might have been. Or no, it's Matthew Forrest.
It was Matthew Forrest.
They were both up the order and something happened. This was up in towards Skyline. Just through the left-hander before. Oh, he just gets out of shape. Nothing Remco could do there. Totally just right place, but wrong time. Car was... You tried everything. If you go on board with Remco Barlow there, we'll just see there was nothing he could do.
That's exactly what we're doing. I'm getting it here. We're on board with Remco.
And that is gutting for the championship for him. Like you said, one of the drivers that was in contention up against Charlie Lund Nielsen, but it seems that sadly Remco Barlow's championship hopes won't be helped by that incident, that's for certain. But of course, these endurance races, I think they affect the points a bit more, don't they, Hasse? As well? I think do you get more points from an endurance win than a regular win, or am I just making that up?
I'm gonna have a look. Last one we had was at Monza, right?
I think so.
No, I don't think so.
In which case, it's not the end of the world, but it's still not going to do his hopes, his championship hopes, that much good.
No, it really isn't. It's a poor position to be in for Remco Barlow, who's now back out of the pits, but with so much making up to do. Matthew Forrest is out of the pits as well, as I'm afraid Kevin Blue is out of the race. M-class leader now is Alfredo Tricarici by 3 seconds or so to Ari Sherwood, who's under a bit of pressure there from Cody Steek, but they're probably not going to be pushing one another too hard at this point. Baron Glover is just behind. The man from Florida. Beautifully sounding Porsche 911. Such a different machine to anything else, basically. And I think you'd have to say about all the GT3s, they are indeed very diverse, very different in terms of layout, in terms of displacement, in terms of aspiration and all of these things. So Interesting times. I mentioned as well, just a quick one, Edward. But to see these cars and this regulation set become the GT class at Le Mans, it's very exciting,
isn't it?
It's very exciting.
It's so competitive as well. It's always close. In GT racing, it doesn't seem to be as close as what we have in GT3. So, in British GT, we've got so many GT3 cars scrapping it away, racing closely around tracks that are quite tight, to be fair. A place like Oulton Park, where it's quite narrow. Donington Park isn't necessarily the widest track, but there was some great moves there just the other weekend. And yeah, it does bode very well for these bigger circuits, like, of course, Le Mans. And in a 24-hour race, that is going to be brilliant for certain. Although I will say, you're talking about the Porsche and how beautiful it's at. It's not a car I want to be in, though, with the weight distribution more towards the rear. The instability and the twitchiness, when you're going up towards the mountain very close to the walls, you know, it's a little bit more worrying if the car does step out on you than it would, say, at other circuits. So the car I'd probably prefer to be in is the BMW that we're currently looking at the rear end of on board Charlie Nilsson in his Audi. Again, the twitchiness in the Audi is part and parcel of how that car has been over the course of its lifespan in iRacing, been on the surface for a considerable amount of time now, but still very faithful and serving Charlie Nilsson very well, as he is now, I think, favourite for the title this season. His first entry into the Sunday GT Masters as well, making his debut and securing it with a well-earned podium on his first time out. And of course, off the back of 2 race victories, one at Fuji, the first of the season being the round before at the Nürburgring. Can he make it 3 on the trot, though, here at Bathurst? It's going to be a job, but he's still within touching distance of Gaston Maceroni, who've had a little while gone in this race, 12 minutes or so, and Gaston is only 5 seconds up the road and well within slipstream. And speaking of well within slipstream, Martin de Jong has just absolutely eaten into that gap, and it's now less than a second between first to second.
Sorry, Edward, I have Pringles on the table tonight, and as they say, once you pop, you can't stop, and that's as true as ever.
Martin can't stop. He's close right up to Gaston now.
Something must have happened to Gaston Maceroni there. You can see. Is there any damage to the car? I think there's a bit of damage to the front end.
I think it was more Martin de Jong.
Yeah, but look at the front.
Saying it earlier.
Look at the way the front looks. Look at the way the front looks. Just from the hitting the curbs in towards the I don't think it's done to any damage, and if it is, it's very minor. That level of damage does not really affect the BMW a whole bunch. I think it's just down to now he's feeling the pressure and having to slow down because he's looking more in behind and less focusing on his apexes. You can see he's covering off. But he's going
a lot more as they scrape into the wall. But again, BMW's very sturdy. They can sort of take that level of punishment and not be damaged by it.
Well, it does look to me like he's lacking a bit of grunt, a bit of grip. Maybe he's overworked the tires over the opening part of the stint. I don't know. Maybe he's having to save fuel now because he realized that he wouldn't make it to the halfway or to the half hour, because the halfway is just not possible at all. But you said Martin de Jong was flying. Look at Patrick Gannon here. He just set the fastest lap of the race, a full second quicker than Martin de Jong, catching up, I think, quite a bit quicker than he was expecting to. And now, looking behind, it's Nicolas Cucato and Charlie Nilsson coming into the fore again here. Sort of halfway through the opening stint here, Edward. This has come together rather before I think we were expecting it to.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot closer than I was imagining. Sometimes you can see that cars tend to spread apart from one another, but I suppose the Mountain Straight and the Comrade Straight are both allowing the drivers to close back into the slipstream and race nice and closely. As Patrick Gallen right in behind Martin de Jong doesn't really want to fight Martin too much. The Dutchman certainly right in behind Gaston Maceroni and can't afford to lose too much time, otherwise that slipstream will vanish. for now. Patrick is quite content, I think, just to slot him behind. You can see it's a pack of 3 that might be breaking away, actually, from Nicholas Cucato. It should be interesting to see how that's going to evolve, because it is now the gap about 1.6 seconds, and any more than that, you're not really getting any slipstream.
It's a good point, and Cucato's just on that limit. But he's got his mirrors full of the Audi of Charlie Lund-Nielsen, and of course he'll be doing everything to make the big boy.
It's close up in front.
Oh yeah, oh my.
Under a lot of pressure.
Here comes Gannon, but he doesn't have the slipstream, but he's sort of... This is a weird position to be in for Martin de Jong, who's sort of closed off, and Gannon, could he get both the positions in one go here? He's still side by side, he's forced to back out, and de Jong goes on the brakes there.
Let's go for the lead.
Oh, almost turning into one another. How they managed not to touch, or maybe it was just the angle we saw it at, but that looked very, very, very close indeed. And nothing's happened so far, so not even a chance to go back and check the replay on that account. So that's a little bit of a shame. I'd love to see that again. Well, Cucato's joined right up with them. Charlie Lund-Nielsen still just half a second, even less behind there as well. As Ari Sherwood is... did he just get overtaken by Cody Steek? Yes, he did. That was sort of expected. Here we go up the mountain again, and look behind there. Nick McLaughlin and Pete Plasto's coming into it as well. So Gaston Maceroni right now is putting in a big old cork at the end of the bottle, you could say, and nobody's really able to pass.
Yeah, I mean, actually, those laps done by the Virtual Racing Compound Ferraris were their fastest of the race so far, and about on par with the leader's best time. So if they can keep that level of pace up, they'll be sitting very nicely in behind this long train of GT3s, sneaking their way up and down the mountain. Martin Young does drop back a little bit in the early phase of the lap. I know that's not where he's the strongest, but coming down the mountain, he does tend to get the car settled down very nicely and close right up in behind the Argentine currently leading Gaston Maceroni. Let's have a look now down through the mountain. Just chucking it through and hoping it sticks. That's pretty much all you can do around here, but Maceroni, I think, has started to dial out some of the mistakes that he's been suffering as well. So I think the race will start to cool off just a touch before it hots up again, maybe just before we get the pit stops, which will be in roughly 12 or so minutes time.
Yeah, that's what I think we'll see a few drivers not make it. Honestly, there's so much flat out on this track that... Oh, and Cody Steek has had a major incident, I'm afraid. He's jumped to the pits. And it's coming down the mountain into the dipper. Oh my word, that is heavy damage to that Mercedes. And it's going to be the tow lost for him, and then the fast repair taking care of the damage. Now Martin de Jong under heavy pressure here from Patrick Gannon. Shows Gannon the outside, no real space, but he's going to be trying to get the run up the mountain here. Which, by the looks of it, he has a very good chance of getting.
Might well have, of course, the inside line, but I think just out of set of that straight line, that top end that we're seeing from Patrick Gannon is very strong, but they can't afford to squabble too much. Come on, lads. You're going to let Gaston get away with it, and he certainly is now, as that gap is close to 2 seconds.
That was a bit of a freebie for Gaston Maceroni there. Did they all make it through that one? Oh, yeah, just about. So you see there, Nick McLaughlin's really pulling back Pete Plasto into this as well at the moment. The two teammates of VRC, it could be their day. They've seen a lot of success in this series as a team, individually as well for Pete Plasto earlier on, but haven't really been able to make it materialize in this season. Of course, with the added responsibility in terms of organizing and stuff, it probably doesn't give you more time to practice. He's fast here though. Nick McLaughlin really coming into the stride, coming down the mountain, and he's doing a pretty good job of catching the Audi ahead there. Oh, Charlie Lund-Nielsen gets a great exit. And now what's going on up ahead? Because I think something could be cooking up here. Martin de Jong still ahead of Patrick Gannon, but by just how much? He dives in
he's letting
through there. Yeah, that makes sense. Gannon clearly quicker at the moment. Kept his car squeaky clean so far as well. Be what gives him the edge. He should be able to go out there and close the gap up to Gaston Maceroni. Which you did mention before, it's sort of cooled down a little bit. Not between the 62 and the 63, who are now even closer than before. And then Craig Durant in the Porsche, best of the Porsches at the moment. And a Matthew Terry, who I don't think was in a Porsche last time out, but he's in one this time.
No, I think he was in a BMW, from what I can remember. So it's a big change from a very understeery car to probably the most oversteery car.
But that you say that, Edward. You say that, but remember, all that weight is at the back. So that's the weird thing with the Porsche. It sort of understeers until it starts to oversteer, but then you use that oversteer because it tends to be relatively controllable with the oversteer. You sort of use it to rotate the car.
I think it's more down to the wheelbase of the car than anything else, because it is quite sort of short. You do get a tendency for the car to be a little bit twitchier, whereas in the longer wheelbase cars like the BMWs and your Lamborghinis, it doesn't seem to be as unpredictable. Ducato, I think he's a bit more of a cork in the bottle now as Charlie Nilsson's looking for ways past. Martin de Jong, Patrick Gannon clearing away. It did say it was sort of a front three with Mesa and Gannon and de Jong just purely based on pace. But of course, when they start to squabble and scrap with one another, they do, slow each other up, and all of a sudden it becomes a 7-car fight for the lead.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think some of the drivers are more so focused on just bringing home the car to the end of the stint in terms of their fuel usage. So, and the tires as well. I think they will be trying to get a full 3 stints in, or that's an hour and a half. That would normally be a stint and a half. So, no crazy feat to do. So, tires should be able to stay alive. 21 degrees at the moment. Early morning times at the mountain here. So, expect it to heat up, though not all that much over the course of the race. Some of the road drivers a bit further down the order trying to make their way back on, but not really with a huge amount of success. There's another crash for Chris Roberts. Just the Audi being the Audi, I think, on him for a moment there. Really need a setup that's able to really mitigate the tendency of the car to sort of not only rotate but over rotate, as we saw there, because it really is what it does. Loses grip on the rear and around it goes. But look at the complexity of these two cars here at the moment. Such a difference in attitude coming over the mountain, and you can really see the Audi being able to change direction quite a lot quicker. So as long as it's on that knife's edge, it's moving along on it very quickly. I think the Ferrari may be a little bit more of a middle ground between the two. We haven't seen that much of loss of control from the Ferrari drivers, at least not in that sense, throughout this season. The new Ferrari, impressively, hasn't really been all that strong since they brought it in. And of course, it's not the only new car in GT3. It's also nice to see that a new car isn't necessarily overpowered from the get-go, as Charlie Nilsson now gets closer. And I think he's been before to the tail of Nicolas Cucato. Gonna want to sneak on through up into 4th place as quickly as possible now. Expecting pit stops from, I would say, as early as the end of this lap here, Edward. Perhaps the next one. I'd be very surprised at this one, but the next one I was putting 2 more minutes into it than I thought. I'd say about 28 minutes. I think we could see a few drivers coming in at that point.
I think we'll expect to see a majority of the drivers coming at around about 31 minutes gone in the race. You'd hope so, at least, just for their hopes of making it through with as few stops as possible. Patrick Gannon, fastest lap of the race so far. He is really closing that gap down to Gaston Maceroni in the lead of the race. And I think Mark de Jong is going to be pleased by that, knowing he made the right decision to let the American through up into second place, because it could very well soon be game on as we come into the all-important battle for track position before the pit window opens. Trying to do Nilsson. He's going to be happy with just finishing inside the top 5 when his rival Remco Barlow all the way down in 13th place. And of course, there's no pit stop. He will not be able to make it within the sort of window to have 2 pit stops total this race. So of course, very good news from the Swede. He's not looking likely to make it 3 wins on the trot, but should something happen to the cars up ahead, a podium is still on the cards, and speaking of cars up ahead, we'll have a look at Gaston Maceroni and see Patrick Gannon is closing in.
But I'll tell you what, Edward, if Patrick Gannon wins today, then he will be gaining, let's say, a not insignificant amount of points on Charlie Nilsson, and I don't think he'll be grabbing the lead by it, but he'll be closing the gap quite remarkably before the final 4 rounds of racing. There's still 4 rounds left here, so even though we've made it a 2-horse race, it certainly isn't. Nicolas Cucato and Patrick Gannon very much still in it, as well as Gaston Maceroni, actually, though it would take a little bit more for Maceroni, but it's Maceroni and Gannon at the moment who are Maceroni 5th in the standings, Gannon 4th at the moment. Mark de Jong is 6th in the standings, so see the fuel saving, by the way, with Charlie Nilsson heavily clutching out. I think he just believes in where he is at the moment, when his track position is probably fine in correlation to the race strategy. Trying to maximize what he can do if he's able to overcut everyone else here. A strategy that we saw to good use at the last 90-minute race. I wouldn't be surprised to see it work here again.
Patrick Gannon has closed that gap down now to half a second. Hasse at the lead of the race. He is absolutely flying in that RPM racing BMW.
Harry Sherwood is in the pits now. He's just been in for his stop, and he's out again, Edward. So that was in the 28th minute, so a few drivers, I think, as I for once predicted correctly, is going to be struggling with this now. Look at Gaston Maceroni having been caught up to big time by Patrick Gannon. And Gannon's looking, but he's finding no way through in Maceroni, who wants to stay ahead in the lead until the pit stop, it seems, and hopes that he can exit ahead as well. Gannon has been flying at the end of this first stint, and they're both pitting in. Mind you, it's going to be, with the pit time and everything, they're going to be close to the 30 minutes, but not necessarily over it. Oh, they both have to come to a pretty decisive stop. Most of them coming into the pits now. Cucato and Lund Nilsson, both of them staying out. So Lund Nilsson, as we saw, one to watch here. Lund Nilsson, he's going to go for the move immediately, I think, if he can, and then just plow on this lap and try to maximize it, because he can't spend this lap sitting there behind Nicolas Cucato. Mind you, of course, Nicolas Cucato could have been saving up on both tires and fuel as well for this very lap, because so much of the race would depend on it.
Yeah, and I think another driver to look out for could be Remco Barlow. He's just on the fastest lap of the race so far. Came in on lap 4. So if those drivers that have just come into the pits need a splash and dash, well, we'll have a look where Remco Barlow is. He's already effectively done his splash and dash. And he's going to be, I think, just at the rear of this train. But the lap times he's been putting out have been very impressive. And I think he might be an outside shot for a good, maybe top 5 result here. If, as long as the car's ahead, they might start to squabble a battle just a touch. He's going to be in a very prime position. You can just see him now. Really quick. Last lap of the race.
He might pick up a bit there. Yeah, it's going to be a very tough ask, I think. especially with the strategy being so much off. And everybody else is going to be doing a splash and dash at the end. He did a full pit stop here. So... of course, it remains to be seen. I don't know. Here comes Kukato and Charlie Lund-Nielsen. We are now within the half hour. Or past the half hour, you'd probably say. Within the proper pit window. See if any, or yeah, both of them coming in now as well.
Both of them coming in at a 31-minute mark, which is what I expected if drivers are going to make it to the end. That is when they would come in.
But I think
Charlie Lund-Nielsen, Nicholas Kukato, they are in a very good spot here, Hasse. They might drop in behind Matthew Terry, Patrick Gannon. Not Matthew Terry, Patrick Gannon. They still, of course, need to pit Matthew Terry. But in behind Patrick Gannon, I think that's incredibly interesting. As well, the fact that the American has gotten ahead of the Argentine. It was the other way around. It was Maceroni ahead of Patrick, leading the race. And now, as Patrick Gannon sees Nicholas Kukato and Charlie Lund-Nielsen into the pits, he will then take over what is now the race lead.
Yeah. Effectively, that is what you would expect, at least. Yeah, because they're not even moving yet, the two. There we go. So Gannon, Maceroni is going to be well clear. Then we look at Martin de Jong. Oh, that's going to be a close one. But I think de Jong...
an unsafe pit exit from Kukato there. I'm not sure if that was within the codes on the exit, but you might get a penalty for that. It does penalise you for unsafe pit exit.
Let's see. Let's see.
It looked a little bit off, but we'll have a look.
Oh, that's borderline, yeah, and you can see him draw left because he sort of realizes. I'm not quite sure. That might be trouble. We'll find out in a bit of time. Nick McLaughlin passed Pete Plastow again. Oh, a bit of a drift there from the Ferrari. It's been a good pit stop for Craig Durant in the Porsche. He's caught right up to these two Fessers here and doing pretty well for himself at the moment. Otherwise, except for Patrick Gannon getting ahead of Gaston Maceroni, there hasn't been the biggest of setups so far. Of course, Darren Fellows had an early stop as well. He's been doing a good bit of pacing around. We'll see how the strategy ends up being for him against Alfredo Tricarici, Baron Glover, and the rest. And who was that who just hit? That hit was loud and clear behind us. So someone hit something, but who and where? I'm looking at Maceroni here, because we were watching Patrick Gannon, and Maceroni was just behind him. It doesn't look like there's any real
De Jong's under pressure here from behind. I think he was really close to battling away with Kukato, and they contact. Dear, oh dear, what happened there? Martin de Jong realises he was the guilty party and he slows right down. That is sportsmanlike driving from Martin. But let's have a look. It was actually pressure from in front. Martin de Jong just going up the inside. And does it looks more like the Kukato sort of comes into him. It might be 50-50, but I guess from on board, Martin de Jong had a better view of it and concedes position. Kukato coming into the pits, though, there must have already have been a penalty that he had to serve, probably from an unsafe pit exit.
Oh, so that's a double whammy for him then. He's got the overlap, but he's sort of also just sticking his nose in as Kukato.
A lot of speed.
Yeah.
I think Martin realizes that he was going to struggle to make it. He was on the apex and the contact happened on the apex, but I think Martin realized that he was going to overshoot it somewhat, but I don't think it changes the fact that Nicholas Kukato was going to be losing it anyway, as he made a mistake on the pit exit, and that's why we've seen him coming into the pits so
Remco Barlow's in as well, and that's probably
he did come in earlier.
Yeah, so that's his second. That's his first regular pit stop, you'd say. And he is then 54 seconds down on the leader. He is about 40 seconds down on Martin de Jong, even after that contact and having to lift there for Martin. So
somehow through all of this, Charlie's in third.
Exactly, I was just about to say it's all playing into the hands of Charlie Lund-Nielsen at the moment. Even though Nick McLaughlin is putting on pressure from behind to try and take some points away as well. I think Charlie here, though, is playing the long game. I think we'll see just where he ends up, but we won't really see before the final stint. Making sure he hits the fuel markers for this stint as well, and then probably gonna see just how he goes from there on. Nick McLaughlin up into 4th place here. Pete Plastow has gained 4 positions. He's up a good deal as well here. And Craig Durant comes in for the 2nd time. He was in on lap, of course I can't see now because he's in the pit. I actually don't know exactly when he was in, but that have been an unsafe pit entry as well. Either that or being underfueled. Not quite sure. Gonna stop here.
Charlie Nelson, like you said, under a lot of pressure from Nick McLaughlin. Pete Plasdale's dropped back a little bit though, so not sure what happened there on the last lap for Pete, but it certainly wasn't as clean as his teammate. Charlie is feeling the pressure a touch, but they can't afford to squabble too much, because if they do, they'll just allow Gaston Maceroni and Patrick Gannon to clear off the leading pair with quite a healthy advantage as well. It's 6 seconds they get from Gaston Maceroni all the way down to Charlie Lund-Nielsen in 3rd, so quite a sizable advantage from 2nd down to 3rd. But of course, Nick McLaughlin and Pete Plasdow don't want to cause it to be any greater than it needs to be, so maybe sitting behind Charlie Lund-Nielsen and seeing what he can do with clear air might be for the best.
It's a good point. Funny to see there's like a stack of pro drivers, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th and 16th here now at the moment. And the AM driver's doing a good job, honestly, of keeping it clear and clean so far here. Darren Fellows was so quick in qualifying, and an eventful, incidentful opening part of the race. He's settled in now. Still haven't had a second pit stop yet, so he'll still be on sort of level terms with everyone else. We'll see how long he can keep the Ferrari running. Purple first sector on this lap from Nick McLaughlin, but that's not going to be enough, I think, to really do much about Charlie Lund-Nielsen. Could be all about the slipstream there. As Lund-Nielsen goes on a personal best as well. Still not catching Maceroni though up ahead. The 2 leaders and the BMWs ahead by about 6 seconds now, so a major advantage as Remco Barlow cruises by on Ari Sherwood. And Darren Fellows comes into the pits here. We'll see just how far he'll be behind the AM drivers further up the field as he comes out.
I think Darren Fellows could be a sneaking shot potentially for a good AM result there. Of course, Alfredo Cicarici is probably favourite to win that racing class tonight, as he's up in 7th place quite handedly. But of course, there is an early pit stop for the virtual racing, not the virtual race, the BDM racing driver of Darren Fellows. So that's probably the reason why he's up the order and then down the order again. Should be all right by the end of the race though. Nick McLaughlin struggling a little bit on the downhill. I think it's the dirty as well that's really affecting the car. Not necessarily as easy to manage through there than some of the others. The BMWs really look planted up and down the mountain. Fastest sector 5 of the race so far done by the BMW of Gaston Maceroni just now. He's trying to reel in Patrick Gannon, but Patrick's actually pulling away.
Yeah, Gannon with a healthy advantage of a 1.5 seconds. He's just about broken the slipstream down to Gaston Maceroni. Further back, it's the same 7/8 of a second separating Charlie Lund-Nielsen with Nick McLaughlin as it was before, as Pete Plastow's coming back into it. But again, everybody here wants to make sure they meet their fuel marks and criteria here. Patrick Gannon, another fastest lap. What is that? 7 tenths of a second quicker 3/4 of a second quicker than Gaston Maceroni on that last lap. Absolutely flying at the moment, Patrick Gannon here.
He is absolutely rapid here. He's just at one with the car on track right now, even after the pit stop, which he's obviously probably, you would imagine, not have taken tyres for. So quick as anything. Presto Helen plunging back down. Maceroni is just dropping back. He can't keep up with him, and now that he's losing the slipstream, he'll drop back even more, maybe into the clutches of Charlie Lund-Nielsen, depending on how his lap times are like. Because, of course, with Gaston now losing out, he's not going to be getting any slipstream assistance. Gap is around at 6 seconds, though, from second all the way down to third, so it'd be difficult for Charlie to make that up, but not impossible, as we do have, of course, this being a longer race. We are approaching, of course, what would be the normal race distance, 45 minutes, but we're going double that length tonight, so it would be good enough for Patrick Gannon to lead after 45 minutes. He needs to lead after 90, which is going to be a lot harder.
Yeah, as Remco Barlow is trying to find his way through on Baron Glover. And the next car up ahead is Matthew Terry. Oh, this is not the place to overtake, and I think Remco knows it.
It's going to be so difficult and frustrating for him. He's trying to look which way he can. He thought about going to the left-hand side through Skyline, but had to back out as that was quickly covered off by Baron Glover. But yeah, it's got to be frustrating for Remco Barlow. He showed good pace, good promise from qualifying, not really from qualifying, just qualifying pace wasn't that great, but in the race he looked a little bit better until, of course, the unfortunate incident. He's flashing his headlights. You can see the frustration creeping through. He knows he's quicker. He knows that Baron Glover is in a different class, and I think Baron is actually going to concede the position. Of course, Remco would have hoped that that was done around about a minute and a half earlier, but of course he will take it nonetheless.
Yeah, definitely. It's sometimes how it is, and you know, the AM drivers will also think, well, maybe there's a reason I'm ahead, and you want to see some evidence of the fact that the driver behind you is actually that much quicker. But by what we're seeing here, Remco Barlow pulled ahead pretty quickly. Matthew Forrest is in the pits here. He's had a crash and had to jump to the pits again, I'm afraid.
It's not his day. He's just not really getting on. I think is he still in the pits? Yeah, he is. Chris Roberts is seemingly out of the race. So the virtual racing compound Audis not enjoying themselves whatsoever. Matthew Forrest, I think, was the car we saw involved in that incident with Remco Barlow earlier on in the race up towards Skyline. And
now here...
just... Sorry, go on.
Oh, it's just Matt Maddox bringing his BMW to a stop in a... touches the wall there. Not the hot... Oh! It's such a difficult place to actually get the car turned around.
Austin Powers did almost.
Yeah. He manages to get it rolling again, but he's in a pretty tough spot there. Now, Pete Plastow having found the pace, it seems, for now at least, on Nick McLaughlin. Yeah, that was rather unfortunate. Great to see Matt getting rolling there, especially before any traffic coming up, because it's a thing that if you're placed just at the wrong point coming through that turn, but it's completely blind, you can see absolutely nothing. You turn into it, and there's a car, and yeah, that's one of the many dangers of the mountain. Insert your own Lord of the Rings meme here with the Sauron trying to bring down the mountain, literally.
It's certainly not the easiest at the best of times, but interestingly, Hasse, hang about, I've just noticed something. Charlie Lund-Nielsen was quicker by some margin to Gaston Maceroni. As soon as Gaston's dropped out of that slipstream, he's dropped off hard. That gap is now 3 seconds from first down to second. Charlie, meanwhile, is going very quickly indeed. His last lap had a personal best Sector 1, in fact the fastest Sector 1 of the race so far. I've got to say, I think Charlie is really having a good turn of pace here and might find himself closing in to Gaston should it stay as it is. Maybe it was a scrappy lap from Gaston. He's going to get his head back on straight, but from how it's all looking and the fact that Charlie's also pulling away from Nick McLaughlin, who is no slouch, it does look very good for Charlie right now to maybe grab a second place here.
Yeah, I think that'll be within his capabilities. Though Pete Plastow is gaining on Nick McLaughlin, so he might have overworked the tires just ever so slightly. So we've got Timothy van der Broek in chat. Welcome to you, mate. But Pete Plastow flashing the lights here. I think just trying to tell Nick McLaughlin that he has the pace. There is Kukato on the tail of Ari Sherwood. Tough recovery drive for Nicolas Kukato as well. After having gotten spun and then having to serve a penalty for the unsafe pit exit. He's put him way behind on Remco Barlow as well, who's actually now gaining very well on Matthew Terry up ahead. So whether that's going to work out, going to be interesting to see. Both of those got through on Alfredo Tricorici without any real drama. Further on, it's another purple sector 1 for this car. It's probably not going to be more than that with the traffic up the mountain here. And
last lap, they were pretty
identical,
weren't they?
Yeah.
So it's 1-1. It seems to be in the way of Charlie Nelson. They're this way in the way of Gaston Mason. Then they do the exact same thing. It's going to be tricky to imagine how it's going to go. As Patrick Gannon's had a moment here, Hasse. He's just had a purple sector 1, but the time is dropping back considerably to the leader. It's now 1.3 seconds. And it's traffic. It's all down to traffic. It just can't get away past, and that has had a huge impact on the race. Cody Steeg, it's just catch traffic at the worst possible point, but that is not going to go down well for Patrick Gannon whatsoever. He is going to be absolutely livid, you would imagine.
Yeah, definitely you'd think I was caught out with my mouth full of Pringles yet again. What? I was trained by Chess.
It depends what the flavor is.
Sour cream and onions.
You see, that's unacceptable. That is
unacceptable.
I'm a big fan of I love the paprika ones, and I'm a bit boring. I like the salt and vinegar. They are. The
salt and vinegar is always good, but
they are top tier. But
they
we'll
don't
move that aside because we do have a race going on.
No, we must talk about snacks.
Patrick Gannon, after that big moment, has actually managed to get the fastest sector 6 of the race.
It was just the traffic.
Away yet again from Gaston Mason.
It was just the traffic.
That's going to be a really, really bad taste in Patrick Gannon's mouth if he lost out on account of the traffic. And I have to say, I think there were things that Cody Steeg probably could have done better through there. If you could see the car was close enough and he knew that he was damaged and slow. But of course, hindsight is 2020. And I think Cody's very grateful that he didn't actually play a part in changing the outcome of the lead of the race, because that could have quite easily have happened there.
Could have gone worse. Could have been much worse. Indeed. 3 seconds up the road from these two now is Charlie Lund-Nielsen, who's sort of on an island here. I don't think he's going to mind that too much, to be completely honest with you. I think he's going to be just about fine with that. Just scouting over the field to see where the closest battles are. It is with these two at the moment, trying to squeeze down the mountain. Nick McLaughlin still ahead of Pete Plastow, though it does seem like Plastow's got that little bit extra pace. He hasn't really been able to set up that decisive move yet, though, and there seems to be no team orders between the two, at least not for now. It's all about track position.
Trying to think of if there might be any team orders, because I'm not sure Pete Plastow was quicker than McLaughlin at this stage, but they are still very close to one another. Have to work together. Maybe they'll be swapping positions as well to help each other save fuel. That could be the fact of this race, as drivers have already pitted before the half-hour mark. You can see they are sort of swapping and moving about a little bit of a wiggle from Pete Plastow, filling the rearview mirror of Nick McLaughlin. And something has happened. Something happened to Gaston Mesa. No, something hasn't happened to Gaston Mesa, and his lap times are fine. It's just the fact that Patrick Gannon has done a 2-minute 2.0, which is ridiculous, and I think, quite frankly, is disgusting and immense by Patrick Gannon. That is a very strong lap indeed.
He's giving everybody else a real showing in just how this is done. They're lapping about 1.5 seconds slower than him at the moment. But okay, it could also be the fact that he acknowledges, okay, I'm not gonna make this pit stop. I'll have to drive flat out for as long as I can here, basically. Because we'll see how it fits for him with the pit stops there. He didn't make the half hour on his first stop. And frankly, I'm not sure he's going to make the hour here on his second. That's going to show in about 8 minutes time or so. So that'll be interesting altogether. He is building a good lead back out to Gaston Messeroni. More importantly, I think, for him, it's to Charlie Lund-Nielsen as well.
Picks up the power so nicely, does the Audi. You just see it out for Marcel, where it just gets up and goes, which is what you need, as you've got this long straight coming up. Last hour was, I think, struggling in behind Nick McLaughlin, looking to try and find a way through. Of course, there is damage on the front end of Pete's Audi. Could be hampering his straight line speed, but not enough to really worry. But then you can just see he's not wanting to send move on his teammate. Lifts off very early before they get to the right hand kink on the Golden Straight. And I think they seem to be happy to stay in single file for now, but I don't know if that's going to be for too much longer, as Charlie Lund-Nielsen is starting to break away. Importantly for them, though, they are keeping Martin de Jong in behind. He is 6 and about half seconds away from Martin de Jong, not Martin de Jong, away from Pete Plastow in 5th. So
yeah,
seems to be alright for them holding on to 2 places inside the top 5. But yeah, it did see Martin de Jong was very quick at the early phase of the race. Obviously dropping back, didn't he, to let through, I think it was Cucato, this man, after a tangle in towards this bend here.
But Cucato losing so much on that drive through, 40 seconds or so, I think, at least what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So Nick McLaughlin just sitting there. Yeah, it's a terrible one, and it's especially the pit entrance here is terribly
from how little you gain as well from the pit exit. It can misjudgment, but rules are rules, and that's sadly just how the cookie crumbles.
And there, Pete Plastow just suffering coming down the hill here, and as we've seen it time and time again, this I think is what keeps him from being close enough to Nick McLaughlin to actually be able to set up something. Struggling there ever so slightly. How Trickerici's on the tail of Nicolas Cucato. We're trying to make up places here, but it's going to be difficult altogether. Harry Sherwood is gaining on Baron Glover as well in the Porsche here, so that's going to be interesting, and I think that's going to be interesting quite quickly as he's gaining fast here, Edward.
Harry Sherwood, like you say, up in 3rd place, doing a very good job, but a little bit of a touch on the wall there. The car reacts and then realises, oh, it's fine, and the damage fixes itself. Yeah, I think it's going to be intriguing to see how Irish Sherwood manages to negotiate Baron Glover if he can get ahead. Was much quicker last lap around, but Irish did come in pretty early, pitted in on lap 13. Most other drivers pitted in on lap 14, with a few on lap 15. So that's sort of how the spread would likely be. Irish could be in on this lap, or maybe the lap after. due to the early pit stop we saw him make in this race. Lots for another lap, so it seems to be alright on the fuel saving component of this race. He maybe realised that he was off strategy and had to save a bit more this time around. But really closing down to the Porsche ahead. Baron Glover, who did his best lap of the race on that last lap. Oh, Sherwood, who did his best lap of the race on that last lap. Closing in. Up the straight they come. It seems to be staying at the status quo, doesn't it, Hasse, as Ari Sherwood is in behind Baron Glover.
That Porsche has to be running a very low wing angle for this to be working out. But it is. And incredibly so. Cody Steeg, I'm afraid, has had a problem here. And it's been a major one for him. It just cuts the grass there. Comes across. Grass on the other side as well. But he's also crashed here, so I wonder what happened. Just... Oh, it turns out there's actually several minutes in between the two. So we come back up here. He's gonna come up the mountain. Oh, that is gonna be a hurtful one. And he gets attached to the wall, as it so sometimes happens, dragged around on his roof, and that's gonna be a... And thanks for today, maybe for Cody Steeg. Oh, he's probably gonna get out back there, but it's gonna be the...
A very long tow.
A very long tow indeed, yeah.
And a very long time spent in the pits. If he hasn't got the fast repair, fix it. He's got about half an hour left in this race to get back out there. Fast this sector's coming through. It must be that the track temperature is coming down, maybe getting more rubbered in. Pete Plasdow with the fastest sector 3 of anybody, in behind his teammate Nick McLaughlin. Craig Duran with the fastest sector 2 of anybody, so just shows that we are seeing the track evolve and get a little bit faster. That time still staying in the 2-minute 2s by Patrick Gannon. Absolutely rapid pace. I believe Patrick was the driver who got his first race victory at... Was it Belle Isle? I believe it was.
Yeah.
The European racing driver looking to get his second of the season. What did he get? Yeah, I think it is the second of the season. Yes, it will be. Seems to be these circuits with sort of walls very close to you and tight twists. It really favours Patrick Gannon. Maybe he just has no fear. He's quite happy driving at the walls but not into them, because it isn't really a lot of breathing space up on the mountain, but he seems to excel around here.
Seems to make very, very few mistakes as well. As Gaston Maceroni is coming into the pits here. Not showing as much of it. There he is. Slowing right down for the pit line. It's a very, very slow pit lane here as well. I think the speed limit is... what is that then? 30 miles an hour? 48 kilometers an hour. I think that sort of...
Pit stops coming in.
Yeah. For Maceroni, Plastow, De Jong, but Gannon, Lon Nilsson, and Nick McLaughlin all going through here.
It's crucial for Gannon that he's been able to extend this stint, because now he will make it, of course, to the 1 hour mark of the race and should be fine to go to the end on that tank of fuel. It might be touch and go for the likes of Maceroni, Plasdow, and De Jong. They will need to fuel save to be safe. Remco Barlow will carry on, and that should see him come out ahead of Martin De Jong, but maybe in behind Gaston Maceroni.
Yeah. Maceroni's up there. Plastow comes out now here. Martin De Jong stationary. And he's going to leave.
Barlow is right in behind Pete Plasdow. This is a race in towards the right-hander. Getting a lot of slipstream and a lot of pace. He's going to be up the inside, but you can already see there's a BMW in the way that's going to... Oh, just put an end to Remco's hopes of getting P5.
Yeah, for now, but he's going to have a pit stop coming up in a few laps as well. So the best he can do for now is to sort of harass Pete Plastow. But to no real use, I would think. It's Nicolas Cucato and Martin De Jong is now back together as well. And that's after a longer stop as well from Cucato. I wonder what dragged Martin de Jong back in this incident here. Quite interesting to see, because... Oh, Nikos Kokato hasn't been into the pits yet, that's why. I was a little bit confused to the entirety of that statement, but it makes sense now. But Kokato, why does it say he's had... Oh, because he's been through on the drive-through. I couldn't really understand why it told us that Nicolas Kokato had 2 stops, but of course he had 1 pit stop in the drive-through. Charlie Lund Nielsen further extending, as we sort of was expecting from what we've seen so far, and this is now where he's gonna put down the hammer, and this is also gonna be where the
15.
Yeah, this is gonna be the pit stop where he can also just spend a second or 2 less, maybe. Fueling than the rest of them, because he's gonna stretch well in to the final half hour, and he knows that on his maximum permitted fuel he's gonna be able to make it last for half an hour.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth the risk, because he knows at the last stint of the race it's not gonna, obviously the race isn't gonna just end flat out when we get to 1 minute 30. There is of course the final lap that needs to be done, which could take it into 1 minute 31's worth of racing, 1 minute 32, depending on when they find the line. So it's still worth getting that extra lap as a buffer in case the race goes 1 lap more than you are predicting. Whereas all those drivers that came in right on the dot, they might not have that 1 lap buffer. They might struggle, you know. So it's going to be difficult for everyone else, apart from Charlie Nilsson, who should be comfortable up until the end of the race. So nothing's all over and done with yet. Remco Barlow's carrying on as well. Credit to him. Might be able to extend it, and Remco could probably have a slightly shorter stop. But I'm not sure about the cars around them. They will probably make it to the end, but if they do, they will really suffer for it.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's behind Pete Plastow for now. He's in a light car, so he should be able to can line it up down here, get by on Pete Plastow. Plastow, who gained 7 seconds on Nick McLaughlin there on the pit stop round. Kind of interested to see just what happened to Nick McLaughlin.
Remco's going for it, you know, wants the track position ahead of Pete Plastow. Pete will slot him behind, but Pete is going to be frustrated, I think, if he then sees the BMW that just passed him coming into the pits. There's Charlie Nilsson in the pits. Here's Patrick Gallen-Race, who was race leader, will now retake it from the Swede. And Remco Barlow, after doing that overtake on Pete Plastow, will frustrate Pete by coming into the pits. That's actually a fairly short stop, I think, by
it's about
Nilsson.
It's
actually, no, it's about right.
Yeah, it's very close to the same as the rest of them. So, the Nilsson, then Plastow, and McLaughlin. Quite a bit of way back there. And then Remco Barlow, Nicolas Kokato, and Matthew Terry in the pits at the moment. So we'll see where they'll be sliding back into it. Also interested to see just how far Darren Fellows can stretch it. And just where he's going to be able to exit once he comes back out on track. Because he's been so much quicker, it seems, than everybody else basically in AM. But I think that early incident is gonna put it out of reach for him, I'm afraid.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think he's going to come out in behind Alfredo Tricarici and maybe Harry Sherwood and Baron Glover. But that pace that he has is going to be quick enough to maybe seem closed by the end of the race. If he comes out, say, 10, 15, maybe even 15 seconds behind with 30 minutes to go, he could close up by the end of the race from that level of pace we're seeing. His best stuff, of course, was the 1 minute 30 or 2 minute 30, not 2 minute 30, 2 minute 3.4. His last lap was a 2 minute 3.5, so he was consistently quick. Alfredo Tricarici, best lap 2 minute 4s, 2 minute 4.8, so a high 2 minute 4. His last lap was a 2 minute 6. So even if he's some way behind, Darren Fellows could quite easily catch up and retake the lead of the AM class.
Interesting perspectives and something to really look out for. But it's true that with 33 seconds already in the bank there on Alfredo Tricarici, he's not in any immediate danger, is he? One thing I will be watching, we'll all be watching, I guess, is Gaston Maceroni having to defend himself from Charlie Lund-Nielsen, because Maceroni went into the pits considerably earlier than Charlie Lund-Nielsen. Those laps that Charlie doesn't have to fuel save at the end here, against those 3 seconds, I guess Gaston Maceroni is up the road at the moment. It might be... I don't think it's enough for Gaston here, but I guess we'll see.
We will. I think it's got to be down to what may come by the end of the race. It's difficult to predict even at this stage, with just 24 minutes to go from the 90 that are scheduled. 24 minutes to go. Very difficult for Barlow, I think, to get any more headway into the race, but Darren Fellows is still carrying on and still putting up quick laps. Personal best again.
Yeah, he is on it right now and putting in lap times that are, well, competitive with the cars ahead of him as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's top 3 pace, that.
Yeah. Of course, he's in with a light car at the moment that makes it look a bit quicker compared to the cars ahead. But still, he's gaining massive time on Alfredo Tricarici. That gaps up to 35 seconds. The pit lane time would be around 50 normally. But with only 2/3 of the fueling having to be done here, he could cut a few seconds off of that pit lane time, maybe here, Darren Fellows. The longer he can stretch it here, the better, of course. I think he will be coming in at the end of, if not this one, then the next lap. And then we'll see just where that's going to leave him for the rest of this race.
So look, I'm just watching up and down and seeing the times come through now, because that's all we could do. Darren Fellows is absolutely rapid, and he's surely got to come in on this lap. Surely he is. He's staying well to the left-hand side. Yep, peeling off now. Backing through the cones that don't move, which is a little bit annoying. Oh, a little bit of a moment as well on the pit entry. I'm not sure if that would penalise him or not. I have seen sometimes people getting caught out for that, but I think Darren Fellows, he might just have gotten away with that.
Yeah, I think...
Bit of a heart and mouth moment, though, of course, through that pit entry. It isn't the easiest.
No, well, yeah, it's a very difficult one. if it's not the most difficult pit entrance, at least in iRacing, it's extremely tricky. There's Alfredo Tricarici. He is going to claim that position back regardless. He's been in the pits for 14, 15, 16 seconds, so... There we go. Tricarici's passed.
Not necessarily too quickly.
And
just
Eric Sherwood just only passes there, and they're gonna have... Oh, they're side by side here, Edward.
I think it's going to be Sherwood, because of the run out of the corner, it's not going to be in the favour of the Ferrari. We've seen that Ferrari as well early in the race. Don't forget, fans make that mistake into this very corner, racing close with someone. I think he's wise to it, though. He doesn't make that same mistake twice. Says, oh my word, the mistake comes from the car ahead. Ari Sherwood just outbrakes himself and hands the position from a plate to Darren Fellows.
Yeah, and immediately goes on through as well.
That is almost the curse of the commentator. I talk about mistake into turn 1, but it doesn't come from Darren, it comes from Ari Sherwood.
Yeah, wrong clip here. There we have it. I think, no, also not. Third time's the charm, Edward. There we go. He just carries too much speed, more than the car will, goes way wide onto the curb, unless he's just trying to let him on through. But you can see the pace difference between the two. The gap's 2 seconds already here. And Darren Fellows is eating into the advantage of Alfredo Tricarici, who's ahead by 1.3 seconds. It's not a lot, and I don't think it's going to be enough for him to hold on. but for a single lap perhaps. Maybe till next time. They're coming down the Conrad straight down towards the kink they go. Up ahead is status quo as well. Even though, guess that Maseroni in that advantage, as he's having to fuel save. That Charlie Lund Nielsen's gained a second over the last few laps. Patrick Gannon is superbly ahead at the moment and looking untouchable. Yeah, and then Pete Plastow, Nick McLaughlin, Martin de Jong, all well separated from one another. Remco Barlow, Nicolas Cocato, Matthew Terry, and Craig Durand. Top 10 in the pro standings. And then Alfredo Tricarici and this guy, Darren Fellows, who's gaining. And we'll see just how much he can gain on Alfredo Tricarici ahead on this time, on this ride over the mountain.
Darren's got to be a favourite now for this AM class victory, but it's so scary being on board. Every time you see him turn into a corner, you worry that he's maybe going to misjudge it, maybe get into the walls. It's been a real test of the drivers' both sort of physical endurance for these races, twice as long as they used to, also mental endurance, especially on the circuit. It's as scary and nail-biting as plunging down through the mountain. For a moment, that was close as well to outbreaking himself, but Darren Fellows, he's really closing the gap down to Alfredo now.
Yeah, absolutely. See that final bit of the dipper and then towards the elbow itself. That's where he made all the difference. And now he's got a massive run here on Alfredo Tricarici. The side draft maybe giving him the last bit here in the kink. This is intense stuff here, I think. Oh, I was just about to say, I think he's passed. No, they've touched. And for somehow, they've kept it pointing in the right direction, both of them. And then Darren Fellows goes into the pits. That's a cheeky one. It's caused a bit of damage as well. I think for Tricarici could be something more substantial. We're gonna go on board and see whether the that's right, that's the one car you can't see anything on, the BMW.
So we did touch on it. It looked like a little bit of a dodgy pit entry, and I think that was one that seen Darren Fellows with a penalty. 30 seconds unsafe pit entry. Potentially, was it a drive-through?
Wasn't that just no? I think that was just his final pit stop here.
Was it his final pit stop? No, because we saw him come in early, didn't we? We saw him come in.
Oh, this is his
third. Before, that was what put him out in behind Dari Sherwood. He made that pit stop and came out in behind Ari Sherwood.
But he would. So he's had 3 now, and he would have had 3 with the early stop as well. He's put him well down, but he
the pits and then come out.
He's 16 seconds down on Alfredo Tricarici here. I can't see that being a thing.
I'm confused because didn't we see him battling with Alfredo Tricarici after coming in? Because he came out of the pits behind Ari Sherwood, who then outbroke himself in zone 1.
That's true, because we have Darren Fellows coming into the pits here.
Yeah.
And let's see, entering pit lane, but he doesn't. Yeah, but he never enters the pits. He just goes straight on through. So yeah, he must have had some kind of penalty from the lap before. Now he's back on the charge here, but with 15 seconds to close on Alfredo Tricarici. In the space of 15 minutes, yeah, that's a big ask. Gonna be a very, very tough job to get done here. It's Craig Durand is dropping back of it. Oh, he's had a massive moment here somehow. And I'm afraid that so has Matt Maddox yet again. I don't know what happened to Craig Durand here. We're gonna have to... We can dig it up It's some kind of thing here with Martin de Jong, but that was just in the pits. And that was the car, when the car was still fine. Oh, and we've had a moment with Darren Fellows who... Oh, that was coming into the pits there. Yeah. Oh, no, and he's gone around. Oh, my word. And it's all come undone. He had to come in again. And he's towed it.
And he's... I don't know what's gone on. I hope he might be able to let us know in the chat, just so we can figure out what's been going on, because this is... Oof, astonishing.
Sorry there for the Windows pop-up. That was obviously rather annoying. We're watching the superb majesty of Patrick Gannon here, Edward. He's been absolutely brilliant.
Strong performance.
Yeah, very, very good so far this evening.
He's actually losing a little bit of time now to Gaston Cerrone. That last lap was a few tenths, which of course isn't a lot, but still can add up. And with 15 minutes worth of racing still to come, not over of course, Gaston will need to drive like hell to close up, you have to say. Charlie Milton as well, still within a shot of a second place, depending on how things go. But he has really started to clear a gap to those two Ferraris in behind, Pete Pastel and Nick McLaughlin, just dropping back a touch. Of course, pit stops are interesting as well. Patrick Gannon extending a lap further in Gaston Cerrone, Charlie Nilsson going a lap further, even Patrick Gannon. So this could still be a race determined on strategy and fuel. We just don't know what's going to happen until we see the white flag, maybe even the checker flag.
I wonder what happened to Martin de Jong though. He's been in the pits as well for 12 seconds and is now stationary in the pits, I think. So he might be another casualty of this race. It seems like we only have 11 cars still racing. As Trickerici and Ari Sherwood is now going to be battling it out. Ari Sherwood, well, I'll tell you what, he's been closing the gap on Trickerici over the last few laps here. 2 tenths over the other, more than that actually. 4 tenths over the last lap here. He's a bit quicker on his fastest lap as well. So this is certainly not over for the win in AM. Ari Sherwood looks to be just that little bit more dialed coming down the hill here.
Seems to be, of course, for the championship. Alfredo Trickerici would love yet another race victory to add to his tally.
Yeah, and this is the two drivers that are battling it out as well at the moment.
Yeah.
Only 6 points between them, but in the favor of Ari Sherwood, so he wants to get by here as well to extend that championship lead just ever so slightly. So interesting to see what's
cars on track right now, but we are watching the battles sort of elsewhere, and the lap times coming through. Gaston Cerrone, quickest car on track based on the last laps coming through, but not by much compared to Patrick Gannon. This is the real battle, though, isn't it, for top spot in the AM class. Championship battle as well in AM. Alfredo Trickerici was, I have to say, probably one of the favourites for the AM class early doors, but I think Ari Sherwood has really developed and gotten quicker and quicker with each coming race. Wasn't necessarily totally at Fuji last time out, but strong performances here, and of course his race victory at Nürburgring, and as well, I believe, a race victory, his first race victory was at Belle Isle, which was in quite a dominating fashion as well. Let's put him in good stead.
And it's still so close between the two as well. Harry Sherwood has also been very consistent driver so far this season. So has Alfredo Tricarici, and of course, I think that's the main reason. It's these two we're seeing slug it out for the AM title, at least so far. I'll tell you what, it's coming down. I don't think by enough. The last lap between Gannon and Maceroni was spot on the same. Maceroni's trying to pile on the pressure here. And Charlie Nilsson hasn't really been able to respond to it here. Maybe a bit of a surprise that he hasn't been able to respond. Maybe didn't have quite the tire life here at the end of the stint to really get the car on point.
I think it's tricky around this circuit as well. It's not. I don't think Charlie Nilsson has been off the pace. It's just this car has not quite been the car to be around here. I have to say, I think the BMW is by far the strongest car around this circuit. It's higher elevation, which means, of course, the turbo is going to give them a bit more of a benefit than the naturally aspirated cars, like cars that rely less on the turbos compared to how sort of the BMW generates all of its horsepower. And of course, just the stability of it, the way the car handles through, it pitches in nicely. It's nice and stable over bumpy surfaces. It can deal with a lot. And even if you brush it into the wall, it's quite a strong car, you know. It doesn't seem to get damaged as easily as, say, the Audi or the Ferrari, which is why we're seeing these two BMWs looking virtually spotless, even though I can guarantee you they've had a couple of brushes with the wall here and there. Certainly nobody's gotten away scot-free from the barriers, but those cars looking pretty much pristine. It shows that these are probably the right cars to be in around this circuit.
So it would seem indeed. Certainly been a dominant display from BMW here tonight, all across the board. But you have to survive
Both
the race.
classes, yep.
Oh yeah. Tricarici seeming to be able to respond to the pace from Ari Sherwood here as he's trying to pile on the pressure.
You know,
yeah,
to make it even to the end of the race. Because he came in on lap on lap 27.
Yeah, that might actually be here. It's 7 minutes from now, Edward. That's gonna be heartbreak. When he's been this close, he'll probably lose positions to at least Baron Glover.
Might be tricky. I mean, he's probably in behind just saving fuel rather than actually going for the position. And then when he knows he's safe enough, he'll see if he can go for it on the last lap. Here we go. Ari Sherwood looking to the outside. Maybe he thinks, you know what, I'm just going to go for it anyway. Even if he knows he might run out of fuel, he wants to give it a good red hot go around the outside, though. It's going to be so difficult into that corner. A long, sweeping right-hander. And, well, inevitably, it's not the line to be on if you're trying to make a move into get ahead. It's a little bit tail-happy from Tricarici. Not over yet, but I think it's Sherwood realising that he probably won't be able to make it to the end of the race on this tank of fuel. If he does, I'll be very impressed, of course, but pitting on lap 27, as we're already on lap 41, it's been 14 laps on this set of fuel. Most drivers averaging around about 15 to 16 if they've been able to really fuel save on a tank. It's going to be difficult for Ari. I think he'll need to save around about 17 laps worth of fuel, which I don't think anyone has been able to do at all this race.
No. That's a big ask. That is a huge ask indeed. Final 6 minutes of the race here. It's gonna put him so far off.
It will be a short stop, so it won't be totally...
No, the pit time in its own, it's going to be over half a minute here, I think, Edward.
Well, he's coming to bits now, yeah. He knew he wanted to just have one last chance at seeing if he could for the race lead, but it's not necessarily the longest pit lane in the world, but it is one where you do go at a very slow speed. So Sherwood will come into the pits as we watch for Baron Glover, wherever he might be. But there he goes. Into the held corner. Irish Sherwood needs to get going sooner rather than later. He won't do, so he'll have to settle, I think, for third place in the M class. And he was actually taking tyres. I don't think he unchecked tyres as he came into the box.
A disaster there for Irish Sherwood. So he's wasted a lot of time on this one, I think. I wonder if they can fuel while they're taking tires. A pit time of 13 seconds. That's not a lot. It's gonna be enough, of course, but... Blasthouse in again here? Or, yeah, he is in again, but...
Yeah, he is.
He's in as well.
He came in on lap 28. Gusto Maceroni, crucially, second place, came in on lap 28. So, well, this could be very interesting, very dramatic indeed.
Tricarici came in on lap 28.
He did as well. So it's might be, so did Baron Glover. So we might be seeing plenty of drivers opting for splash and dash pit stops.
They're not opting for it. They're forced to it, I think.
Very true. I think one of the only drivers that we know is guaranteed to finish this race without taking an extra pit stop is Charlie Nilsson, driver in third place. We don't know if Patrick Gannon can make it last. We don't know for certain if Gaston Maceroni can last. We know for sure that it's more likely that Patrick will make it till the end rather than Gaston.
Also because Charlie doesn't seem to be pushing that hard. He might know that he still has to sort of save and lift and be absolutely sure.
First car we look for. He's going to be closer to the pit lane, so we'll have a look now as he's coming up towards the pit lane now. Is he going to come into the pits this time by?
Nope, there's going to be one more lap.
Car behind then. Gaston Maceroni. Is he going to come into the pits? No, he opts for one further lap. So they're going to carry it on. They're going to get to the line just at the worst time, because now that means they're going to have to do, I think, we've not got the white flag. I've not seen Barney waving the flag. I think this is 2 more laps here, Hasse.
Yeah, that it is. It's going to be 2 more laps.
That's going to be disastrous, potentially.
That could be devastating for any driver who hasn't really gambled on that happening. And anyone who has gambled on it could be looking at a potential race win here at the end. If everybody else has to do a late pit stop. So that's going to be really interesting here.
What did I say, Hasse? I said the race could go 2 minutes longer than they were expecting, which could really hurt people that haven't factored that in. If you come in at the 30-minute mark each time, your last stop might need to be 32 minutes. That's an extra lap of fuel that you're not going to be able to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Huge, huge drama here. Harry showed by making an early pit stop, even with the dramas and calamities that unfolded around it. I mean, his pace was good, and now he's in clear air. He might be able to leapfrog Alfredo Tricarici, who's got damage there on the right-hand front. So
yeah, but he took the tires on that stop, though, Edward. That must have cost
him.
There
was drama. Yeah.
That must have cost him time that he isn't going to have the time to really claw back. Tricarici's got that damage, though. I don't think... Has he been carrying that for the entirety of the race? Or is that fresh? It's... Not quite sure, though, but it seems the car is quite a bit there's a little twitchy there. Matt Terry, I think.
Maddox.
Oh, it's Matt Maddox, yeah, that's true.
In the BMW. Coming into the pits.
He doesn't like it, but he has to. That's going to hand it to Baron Glover. Baron Glover is going to sail on through unless he has to come in as well.
He came in on the same lap as Alfredo Tricarici. He might just do.
The Porsche is going to take it.
Just about good enough.
And who's that coming in as well? Gaston Maceroni is in. Maceroni's in here on the last lap. Patrick Gannon is going to take it to the line. Charlie Lund-Nielsen is gonna go through.
There's the white flag.
The white
we
flag.
now have the final lap.
Trickerici's into the pits here as well, so Baron Glover is well out ahead, and here comes Harry Sherwood, and he's through! Or is he? No, he's not yet! And he's
It's gonna be closing to turn 1.
Oh my word!
Turn 1, turn 2.
Much closer than anybody would have anticipated. The white flag has been waved here, and Nick McLaughlin has claimed 3rd place as well from Gaston Maceroni. He's going to be safe, I think, from Pete Plastow. I think. That's what it would look like, at least. I think he has plenty of an advantage. But this is surely to be the battle to be watched here. Let's just see here as Patrick Gannon is making his way atop the mountain at the moment. We'll quickly cut on back to the battle for what is effectively just like second now, because Baron Glover from Matt in Black, he's come from out of nowhere with the strategy, with the Porsche, naturally aspirated flat 6. Obviously going to be better on fuel than most other cars in the class.
Last lap here, Hasse, because where is Patrick Gannon? Oh yeah, he's way up ahead. I thought for a minute they were on the they were just ahead of Patrick on their own, so that was worrying. But we can see now Patrick has only got a few corners to go.
And he's going to take a brilliant race win here. 11 seconds clear of Charlie Lund-Nielsen, who I don't know if he was held up or if he just sort of made sure he was making it to the end. But a beautiful race, a beautiful win for Patrick Gannon. 2nd place goes to Charlie Lund-Nielsen, who comes around Murray's just around here and across the line. And 3rd to Nick McLaughlin as well. Brilliant drive by the Canadian. Really taking it home on the strategy there as well. Gaston Maceroni is going to finish 4th ahead of Pete Plastow, Nicholas Cucato, then Remco Barlow in 7th.
Harry Sherwood ahead of Alfredo Tricarici at the line there.
Oh, what's happened to Tricarici?
My word, crabbing. There must have been something going on. Is it into the final corner? Was there contact? Did he just outbrake himself?
Oh, that was...
I think he outbroke himself, and there was a bit of a gap there. I'm not sure if that's going to be looked at or not, but
we're going to see it from on board here with Harry Sherwood. Last lap drama. Oh, he tried to... But you know, it's the final corner.
Yeah.
You got to go for it.
It sort of goes wide, and then Gaston Maceroni sort of brakes abruptly on the apex. Not Gaston Maceroni. Alfred Tricarici brake abruptly on the apex, but the car behind is supposed to obviously predict that and put on the brakes themselves. Not predict it, but, you know, be there and aware of the fact that the car is slowing for a corner and might have to slow down a bit more. Dear oh dear, though, that's certainly a bit more dramas added to the mix. Why not? It's not like the race was dramatic enough as it already was.
You have to say. We'll just have to see there. Remco Barlow 7th in the end here. That's a pretty solid point. So all the finishes better than his qualifying position. And Gannon is leading as usual. It hasn't been that as usual for the last few rounds here with Charlie Lund-Nielsen. But it's been a fine display here tonight from Patrick Gannon. Here with Craig Durant across the line. Edward, I think we will have the results ready, and I think you can actually just go and show him for an overall perspective. There we go. Patrick Gannon takes the win for RPM Racing, head of Charlie Lund-Nielsen and Nick McLaughlin for Virtual Racing Compound. That, of course, completes the podium. Then Gaston Maceroni in 4th place ahead of Pete Plastow, Nicholas Cucato, and Remco Barlow. Matthew Terry 8th and Craig Durant 9th. In 10th, the AM-class winner, Harry Sherwood, ahead of Alfredo Tricarici. Late drama between the two. And we'll see if anything is going to be an outcome of that situation. Baron Glover gets 3rd there, which I'm kind of surprised to see it. But wasn't he ahead? What happened to Baron Glover?
No, he was in the I think you said he was good on fuel, but I think it was not quite good. I don't know. He was all right. He carried on to the end, but I think maybe he slowed down a lot on that last lap to make it to the end.
No, he crashed. Look at this.
Did he not? Oh,
He
no.
crashed. Look at this. We've missed this altogether. Whatever happened to Baron Glover? Look at this. Is where the other two gets past him. And now we've got the results up on the screen. Let's see if we can get back here. There he is. He crashed. Let's just see whatever happened there to Baron Glover. I want to find out. He touches, then it craps along. It's bad there. He's already had a hit to the wall. The others come sailing by. Oh my word. Oh, and we thought that looks safe, Edward. That looks safe and sound. And he's gonna be out of it.
Dear, oh dear. Heartbreak there for Baron Glover. The jubilation, of course, for Patrick Gannon and Ari Sherwood that take the race victories. And it's, I think, a repeat of the class victories that we saw at Belle Isle. 2 Americans coming out on top yet again.
Yeah. Well, Baron Glover then gets 3rd in AM and 12th overall. Back to the results there ahead of Darren Fellows, Matt Maddox. And then the Stricken Souls, Martin DeYoung, Cody Steek, Matthew Forrest, Chris Roberts. And is there even a final one? Yeah, Kevin Blue had a tough race as well. Edward, that was an interesting race, an interesting end to it as well. And let's see if we have a driver or two who's willing to speak to us about it. And of course, asking myself that rhetorical question, I then scrambled to open the Discord channel and see who we have. And we do indeed have a winner of the race. Here is Patrick Gannon with Edward May.
Oh, we brought in Patrick Gannon. Here we go. Race winner. Oh. Congratulations, mate. It was tricky there at the beginning of the race. You're out of position on qualifying down the order, but you seem to have a good way to carve yourself up through the field. How was your race pace so different to your qualifying?
To be honest, I didn't really have a whole lot of time to practice in the week, so I used qualifying to really try and figure out how I can go around the track. And I found out that my pace was pretty decent on race pace, but I also had to do a lot of fuel saving. So that helped me kind of like stay really focused and be really precise on everything I was doing. So that helped with my consistency.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting as well in terms of the championship. This is, I believe, your 2nd race victory of the season, getting your first at Belle Isle. Do you have any more confidence in the next sort of, I guess, 4 rounds of the championship to maybe snag 1, maybe 2 more?
Hopefully. I do like most of the tracks for the remainder of the season. Zolder's a really fun track, although I wish I was in the Audi for that track. But we'll make the best of it in the BMW. So.
Well, congratulations, mate, on your race victory. It seemed like, yeah, the BMW was good around here, but maybe not so good at some of the upcoming circuits. But we'll see. It's all about the driver because the cars are relatively balanced in terms of BOP. Say relatively, because we know what iRacing is like, Patrick. But congratulations, of course, on your race victory. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out on the broadcast?
Yeah, you guys are just putting on a great broadcast, and the VRC guys for putting on a pretty good league.
Excellent stuff, Patrick. Well, thank you very much for jumping in to have a chat, and we wish you all the very best for your next race.
Thank you very much.
We'll jump straight in and cut across Edward quickly here with a Scandinavian overtakers. It's me having a word with Charlie Lund Nilsson. Charlie, welcome to the booth. It's a pleasure having you in. Interesting race there. Did you expect any of the drivers ahead of you to be having to pit there on the last lap? And as a extended question here, did you actually expect it to go that extra lap at the end?
Yeah, hey guys. I was 100% certain that Patrick was gonna dive down the pit same lap as Gaston. I was practically celebrating, but you know. Yeah, kinda was expecting it to go the full 44 laps. I did some practice stints and kind of figured.
I guess you can't sell the hide before you've shot the bear, as you say. I think you have that saying in tune. Did you have that saying too in Swedish? I don't know if you do. Anyways, it was a really interesting race to watch with that finale as well. So, but for you, Charlie, it's gonna be great all together for the championship standings. Given the poor luck of Remco in this race, you're gonna be left with a decent lead here now for the first time in the season.
Yeah, I think so. Should be pulling away now. 0x as well. I'm pretty sure Patrick got fastest lap, right?
I think he did, yeah.
Yes.
Pretty sure he did, yeah.
2:02.01.
Yeah, that's brutal.
That's more than a second on my fastest. So yeah, he had incredible pace. And to be fuel saving the whole last stint and still keeping up that pace was incredible.
And so with Zolder, Montreal, Daytona, and Spa coming up here, Charlie, is that tracks that makes you feel comfortable that you can take it all the way to the line and claim the title here?
Well, Zolder and Canada I have to buy, so I have never driven it.
That's a very good answer for it, to be honest. Well, it'll be interesting. We'll see you in 2 weeks, and hopefully you'll have 2 weeks time to practice there for Zolder. Charlie, great race today. Great to see you as always. And is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to this time around?
Yeah, shout out to Patrick Gannon for the amazing race.
Short but sweet there, Charlie. Thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and congrats to you for a good result and a good race here tonight. And hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks' time again.
Yeah, see ya.
So it's going to be on you whether we're going to go talk to Pete Plastow and Nick McLaughlin, or whether we're going to bring in Darren Fellows for this one. I think I know what you're going to choose because you had him in earlier. So go ahead, bring him in.
I will bring in this man, Nick McLaughlin, who came in third place in that race, and it was very well measured from you. It was not necessarily a race that was done in on-track battles, but you got the strategy done really nicely. And how touch and go was it being able to make it till the end on that tanker field?
It was very, very hairy. I was really hoping I was going to go a lap shorter, but Patrick, man, he just did not let off on his pace and force the extra lap, so I had to fuel save a bit more than I wanted to, but we made it, and it panned out, and I'm super pumped to have a strong result here.
Yeah, it's a very well-earned podium. Not sure if that's your first podium of the season, Nick. I think you've had a few ups and downs of this season, but it's good to see you up to good ways up on the podium. And of course, does that give you confidence coming into the next round in 2 weeks' time?
I definitely. It's there's confidence, but it's a very tough field here, and it's going to be a battle up front no matter what track. So it's really exciting for the league, and happy to be racing and a part of it.
No problem, mate. How are you finding the Ferrari as well? It seems to be not necessarily the favoured car in terms of the BOP, but it's one that seems to be nice and stable.
It is really quick on a lap, and then it just falls off. It's definitely not the strongest, but you know, it's I've always ran the Ferrari with Pete as a teammate, so it just wouldn't be the same league if we didn't.
Well, good to see you keeping up with traditions. Thank you very much, Nick. Before we say goodbye to you, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out on the broadcast?
Shout out to you guys. Always love the broadcast. Shout out to Gannon and Nielsen as well. They ran a perfect race. I had nothing for them. And shout out to VRC. It's always a pleasure racing with those guys, and of course hosting this league.
Thank you very much, Nick. And with that, Hasse, that concludes our portion of the evening, I think, where we do broadcasted interviews. So now we need to look forward to 2 weeks' time when we go to Zolder.
Indeed, I need to unmute myself before start talking. Zolder in 2 weeks it is. And an interesting one as well, Edward. It's a track that I haven't driven it a terrible lot, but I feel like I know it awfully well. From all those Bellcar broadcasts, the 24-hour races that we've done there. So it's going to be an interesting one. It has a tendency to be, shall we say, one of those tracks that can descend a bit into chaos. So a bit of a fingers crossed one, but they hope they can keep it clean. But it could also be one for a bit of an upset, which I also said for this one. But I'm a believer, I'm a dreamer indeed. So we'll see what happens in 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much for joining in with Edward May and myself, Hasse Rømer, here on the virtual racing compound tonight. Thank you, of course, to Advanced Sim Racing for sponsoring the series and making it possible. And, well, until then, in 2 weeks' time, I think nothing more remains to be said than until then, take care, have fun, and bye-bye.